let's start off with Juve. Oh my goodness. I don't think, Nicky, that even David Cartledge was expecting quite a performance when he pointed out that this was his game of the week, Juve versus Como. They're doing pretty well, aren't they?
Listen, David was a lot braver than I would have been. I can't imagine for several years now having picked a Juventus game for game of the week. Motta, of course, has been a thing that's intrigued us, but I can't remember the last time I enjoyed myself this much watching a Juventus game. I honestly can't. It was really entertaining, open football. I thought that Juventus played in a direct and courageous way. Look, we need to say Como gave them a lot of space, and so when you've got something like Mangula running through and scoring his first goal, which of course is one of the big talking points come out of this game, a next-gen player scoring Juventus' first goal of the season when he started quite unexpectedly. There's two parts to that, right? Como gave them chances, but if you were looking for a first indication that yes, Thiago Motta, I was about to call it Motta ball there, and I'm thinking, are we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit? But Thiago Motta's identity, this willingness to play a very open and flexible, fluid style of football that we saw at Bologna, he's definitely brought that, at least in style, to Juventus as well.
And I guess the Bangula pick does it feel like kind of a statement by Motta, really? I mean, you could argue the whole lineup really was a statement. You know, what the youngest Serie A lineup in a very long time. Certainly Juventus' youngest Serie A lineup. And we sort of associated them with, let's be clear, expensive old lags in recent times. Whereas as now, you've got something totally different. Like Bremer at 27 was the oldest player on the pitch. You've even got a younger goalkeeper. So this feels like a start again for Juventus. And I guess I would ask you, Nicky, how does this affect expectation for the season? I mean, you talked about them getting a bit of latitude and a bit of space from Como. Are they going to get a bit of space from the supporters and the media, because they're clearly starting again and Motta has made that very clear?
You've picked up on something really important there, I think, about Bremer being the oldest player in the team at 27. It was a really young team, and of course there are players who weren't part of it. Douglas Luiz, the more than 50 million euro signing this summer being the big one, and there was this slightly false line that got drawn. And look, I may have even said it myself, and it's a bit of a casual, easy throwaway line. Look, Douglas Luiz is not in the side and Mangula in the team. They're not playing in the same position, right? Mangula plays on the left wing. Douglas Luiz is going to most likely play in the centre of midfield if he goes with that 4-2-3-1 again. And I think there's a question there about exactly why Motta went for the lineup. I think part of that is about accommodating the players you have, and Kenan Yildiz moving in from the left to play in the central number 10 spot. He was brilliant, by the way. I think you're really going to see this team built around Yildiz this season, which is an exciting prospect, I think, going to give him his chance to be the guy a bit. But again, questions we don't know, because they're also pursuing Tieran Koopmeiners in this transfer window, and if he comes in, you'd expect he might come into that central role. So in terms of what exactly this team looks like, I think we don't need to think we have all the answers after one round. We definitely don't. In terms of, does this help buy the manager some credit and patience locally? Yeah, I think everyone's excited in Turin. You have to think this club has such a specific history, because it's coming off this, I think, mentally still not over the 9-year run of winning the league every season. It got used to being the team that just wins every single time. And at the end of that, the last part of that was this deliberate, at least on the face of it, deliberate attempt to re-establish a new identity. Okay, Maurizio Sarri gets brought in, Andrea Pirlo gets brought in, but it felt like even though there was lip service being paid to, we're going to do something different, we want to have a new tactical identity, we want to be more attacking, neither of those managers really got the wholehearted buy-in of everyone at the club. There was scepticism about each of them for different reasons. Maurizio Sarri, his face didn't fit. He wasn't the stile Juventus guy. He was a bit too rough around the edges. And so you go to Andrea Pirlo, who's classically Juventus, but no one really quite was sure if he was up to the job of being in charge of such a big club. And I think in both cases you could argue the club didn't throw their weight behind the managers as they should have done. So then you turn back to Max Allegri, who you trust to just win, because that's what Max Allegri has always done. And he doesn't win. What he does do is, I think, fall more and more into just peak Allegri mode of playing. And look, last season, there were good things that Juventus did last season. I think they had the lowest XG against them from open play, at least, of any team in Serie A. They were that good defensively, right? Like no team was giving up fewer scoring chances in open play to their opponents than Juventus. It was just that still didn't lead to them winning, and it was eye-clawingly horrible to watch. It was really boring. And I think that Motta has come in, and for the first time maybe since the end of that run of titles, and maybe even before, because Sarri, of course, did win one of those titles, there's a willingness with the new manager to go, okay, like we're really doing a new start now. They've already had to change the entire board after the financial situation, the financial scandal last season, and now they've got Cristiano Giuntoli, who came in last June as a sporting director. He's been there for a full year. This is his first real moment of now this is his team, not just inheriting someone else's project as well. And it feels like there is cohesion and willingness to get behind the new manager's ideas in a way that there hasn't been. I mean, look at the transfer market. The midfield is completely alien. Adrian Rabiot, who was this key figure last season, he's gone. And Rabiot has been, I think, a really overarching figure in good and bad, because he was good by the end of his time at Juventus, but he didn't fit the new manager's approach, so he's gone. They've gone and spent that money on Luiz. They're talking about spending a similar amount again on Coop Miners. They've shown the faith in him to bring through these guys that he trusts from the youth setup, while also saying goodbye to players like Sule and Heisen, who they could have kept around, who have value to them. So there's a real sense of, no, we're doing this on your terms now, Motta. And I think that has got a lot of buy-in from everyone, because everyone was so tired and frustrated of doing the same things and still not winning under Allegri.
Yeah, Andy, I could almost hear that announcer at Basel Airport where you are saying, well, hang on just 1 minute, Nicky Bandini. As optimistic as you are about this rejuvenated Juve, it's only the first match of the season. And with all due respect, it's only Como, and Nicky suggested that Como gave Juve a lot of space to score 3 goals against them without reply. I wonder whether it's too early in the season, or are you convinced that this is a new Juve for this season that could possibly challenge Inter for the title?
Dotun, you're right to make that point. It's definitely too early in the season, and it is Como. And of course, the best thing about Juventus playing Como on Monday night was giving everyone on social media the chance to repost that picture of Thiago Motta studding Cesc Fabregas in the chest when PSG played Chelsea in the Champions League a few years back. But I think there were two sides to it. Firstly, for the game on the night, even if Como were really open, that's sort of defined by the players they've had and the window they've had, really. They're not like another promoted side or most other promoted sides. They have serious Serie A players that they've brought in an attempt to hit the ground running and do really well. I think the other thing is, going back to what we were saying, it's about starts, isn't it? I think of all the leagues around Europe, and I have said for a while now that I think it'll be a really busy end to the transfer window, because there are a lot of clubs that need to buy, and more importantly, there are not a lot of clubs that need to shift, and they're going to have to find a way of making that happen in the last week of the window. A lot of the Serie A clubs have kind of preempted that, really. They've been trading furiously, and I don't mean buying furiously, like doing both, really. And we talked in the last couple of weeks about how Juve and Roma are possibly the best examples of that in Serie A. So with Napoli hoping to be the same. So to say that this Juventus side is the same Juventus side that's going to be taking the field in mid-September is not correct. As Nicky says, they've got a couple of big moves they're hoping to make. They're probably still hoping to shift a few as well. But I think in terms of a calling card, in terms of a good start, in terms of starting to build goodwill that will give you the room to work at a club that big, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, immediately names jump off about the transfer still to happen, right? Federico Chiesa is one of the big talking points of the window in Italy and his future at 27 years old. He's been messo a parte. He's not part of the first team squad at Juventus. There's been no ambiguity. the club want him to go. They just haven't yet found the spot for him. I think he's got 1 year left in his contract, so it's a real push to get him and make some money back from him. And likewise, you mentioned Como and their ambitious transfers. They've done a lot of business. I think even since that game, they've made a deal for Sergi Roberto. There's Nico Paz as well from Real Madrid they're talking about. There's a lot of business still to be done, definitely by both these teams. And Como, I certainly wouldn't try to draw any conclusions from them from this one game. But I think that that's why I'm really hanging on to not necessarily a judgment that Juventus are back and they're going to win the league and all these things, but just a judgment that was a kind of football that Juventus haven't played in a very long time.
In contrast, though, to Juve's flying starts, we have Antonio Conte's less than flying start with Napoli, losing 3-0 against Verona. And unusually, Andy, he's taken the blame.
That was the best in contrast to start a sentence that I've heard in a very long time. You could say that again. I think we were knowing that already that Napoli were not the finished article, as we said, that they're one of the clubs who they would love to really be in the position that Juve and Roma are in at the moment, a little bit further down the line, which obviously they can't be because as both the coach and sporting director have said, we're blocked at the moment. That's the word they used until they get rid of Osimhen, because it hamstrings them wages wise and in terms of the money they would like to spend on new players from the fee that they will hopefully get back for Osimhen wise. So what we weren't expecting is that second half performance. I mean, I think people have looked at Antonio Conte and what he's said over the last couple of weeks, and particularly after the penalty shootout win over Modena in the Coppa Italia, and thought, from a distance, this is Conte doing what he does, saying it's not the perfect conditions. It's classic Conte. But actually, everyone on the board who spoke publicly is the same. You know, that they are just in this position where they can't really do that much at the moment. Now, they did sign David Neres from Benfica on Monday, the Brazilian winger who was part of that brilliant Ajax side in 2019 that got to the brink of the Champions League final. But there's a lot of work to do. And as we were saying last week, even if they get Lukaku in now, it's going to take him a while to get to Conte, Lukaku levels of transcendency. But I think if we focus on this game, Nicky, the way that they fell to bits after the merest prod in Verona on Sunday was really quite alarming.
Yeah, I think you have to keep in mind, I think this is something that Conte's been trying to reinforce in amongst, it's been a real mixed bag, like you say. Some of it does sound like classic Conte complaining to me, but some of it is just reinforcing in everyone's mind, I haven't just taken over the team that won the league, I've taken over the team that finished 10th last season and went through 3 managers. And I think you have to accept that players who went through that season are going to carry the scars of that season. There's going to be that feeling of here we go again. When things start to go wrong, that gets into your bones, doesn't it? Oh, we've been here before and it went wrong before, and you expect it to happen. Having said that, you can't also ignore individual performances. Juan Jesus was terrible. He was terrible, and he was completely at fault on the first goal, and I would argue on the second one as well. And that raises various questions. Obviously, there's an easy answer, which is, well, they signed Buongiorno to play at centre-back. He did play in that cup game. They didn't concede a goal in the cup game, and he wasn't available for this game because of an ankle injury, and you hope that he'll come back and perform better. But why didn't Rafa Marin play in this game, who's another player they signed this summer? What is the long-term plan there? Because Jesus was bad last season as well. I'm sorry to put it in such blunt terms, but he didn't have a good season last season, and he hasn't started this season well. And I think a lot of Napoli fans are going to look at that situation and go, well, why is he still in the team? So there's levels and levels to it. It is interesting that while there's this constant use of bloccato by Conte, that the market is blocked, there is clearly still business being done. Like you just said, Neres coming in. There's a lot of noise at the moment that Billy Gilmore's going to be coming in very soon, so that they are still trying to rework that midfield, and I guess do it in Conte's image. I have this I suppose, long-held reservation about Conte, which is he's obviously a brilliant manager, and I think I fell into the trap as much as anyone that he just because he's there that I expect them to start winning because that's what Conte does. He goes places and he wins. But I'm not certain I've ever really thought he's the most astute judge of transfer market talent. And are they going to spend a lot of money on players who don't end up being that impactful there and filling these gaps in the way that that perhaps they need to?